welcome all to the first session of the day. Unusually, it's a panel discussion. Now, these are normally at the end of the day, but innovation is what this conference is all about, and the organizers have decided to mix it up by throwing in a panel discussion to liven us up all this morning. And I have a fantastic group of panelists, both here in the wonderful HKPC venue and online on screen. It's quite unusual, this, you know, we're sat here socially distanced, wearing our masks, and we have our two fellow panelists who are obviously very socially distanced from us, and no need to wear masks. So thank you very much for joining us online, and we'll try and make this as interactive and chatty as possible. So I'm going to just ask a quick opening question for each of the panelists and allow themselves to introduce themselves as well, although you can see all the bios in the brochure, etc., for this conference. I'm very pleased and honored, actually, to have all the key sponsors, some of the key sponsors represented on this panel. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting this event. I've been working with the IS Summit for nearly 20 years now, since it first started. When was it, Dale? 2003, the first one? Yep. 2003. What a phenomenal track record. I mean, kudos to all of you guys, because it's amazing history, and there's been some amazing events down the year. And thank you for your support, because these kind of events would not be possible without all of you supporting this event. So without further ado, I'm going to crack on. And this panel is about the new normal. Well, what is the new normal, right? It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? We hear it all the time in this pandemic age, new normal. So the obvious first question, I'm going to ask each of my panelists this one, and then we'll make it more interactive and just jump around. But for the first question, I'll allow all the panelists to introduce themselves and to also say what they think the new normal means. And from your own work perspectives, how are you addressing the security risks of the new normal? So, Alban, I'll kick off with you over on my right here.
All right, thank you. So my name is Alban Kwan. I'm the regional director for CSC, looking after Greater China and Japan and Korean market. What I would say about new norm is that we don't actually know what the new norm is, actually, at the moment. Because just a couple of weeks ago, the management in my company just got together to think about what do we do after the COVID, right? Do we go back to work as normal, or do we embrace a new norm, which is undefined at the moment? I think people are defining what the new norm is. People might, I think some organizations are thinking about like a hybrid model where, people will go back 3 days and then work remotely for 2 days or something like that. But we don't know, and it might be really complex from this perspective, especially if you're thinking about like a large corporation. They might have different jurisdictions. Some country might do differently. So the whole network would be really complex. So that's addressing your second question, the second part of your questions. How do we actually deal with cybersecurity? The answer that I would provide is that you have to think outside network and network security as a concept of cybersecurity. Because the matter of fact is it will become a hybrid model where people work in the organization and outside the organization. So that's my perspective. Paul?
Yeah, hybrid model. I think you nailed it there. And we'll talk more about that as we go through this panel discussion. Next up is Tony from Trend Micro. Tony?
I'm Tony. For me, the new norms is much more easy just because I do not need to worry about the traffic jam. I need to cook my breakfast before starting to work. And then I look at the monitor, look at the camera to start a sequence of video conferencing, just like today's our friends in other Apex region. Okay, honestly, using the video conference is more busy than a face-to-face meeting, because the schedule actually is being transparent on the Outlook or the email tools. All my schedule are fully booked and tightly packed. Okay, and then also during the meeting we need to handle some difficulty during the remote setup. Okay, and of course about the security era. I believe during the pandemic, more organizations shifting to the cloud, and And I have to just like an Q&A machines to answering all the security challenge feedback from all other organizations about how they tackle about the new technology adopting in the cloud. That's the new era I'm facing now. Yeah.
And about the new normal, how normal is it to be wearing a tie nowadays?
It's a good feeling that in a conference seeing each other face to face. Yeah. Of course, we have enough safety measurement. You see our distance? Yeah, right.
Excellent. Okay. So Ricky from Cisco.
Hi, my name is Ricky. I think if talk about the new normal for me is like the normal because when I'm work for Cisco, we are using the hybrid model, which means sometimes we conduct the meeting or technical workshop through the video conferencing, and then we also will back office to work. So for me, the new normal is the although some of the organization is quite new working model, but for us we are work in a normal activity. Yeah, because this is our culture already. Yeah. So we can connect with the online people and offline people all the time. Yeah.
And what kind of security risk does that pose, though?
I think you talk about the security risk. I think not only take care the within organization, we also need to consider the outside because some of the organization they are heavily using the cloud technology. Of course, during the pandemic, they also need to take care of the remote user, how to make them more secure work and connect the resources securely. Yeah, that is what I thought.
Yeah, no, great point, because that's exactly what we'll be discussing in the course of this morning about the cloud, security, leave or stay, and obviously we have a lot of experts here to discuss that. Over to the virtual folks that we have on the screen next to me, and let's start with Wana. What do you feel about the new normal, and from your work perspectives, how are you addressing the security risks?
Thank you. I'm a global solution engineer. So for our role essentially is looking at some of the threat landscape and adopt the product changes. What best suit for the customer. So because of this, the spontaneous changes in the behavior, so-called like a new norm. So we have to look at some of the security defenses perspective. So like last 12 months ago, we were very much focused on improving infrastructure security, and this new norm making us change product behaviors. More focused on the users working from remote, how to provide assistance, how to secure them. And this new norm is something that we need to adapt as a users, as a security consultant. How do we provide assistance, and as a product perspective, how do we change the product roadmap to provide this new norm of a new working style? Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Wana. I'm looking forward to drilling into that as we go through. Last but not least, we have Sean. Hey, Sean. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Paul. Let me first say that I am so blessed to be in an industry which does not need me or to get up every morning and rush to a place. So the new norm for me is I can research till late night, sleep a little bit extra in the morning, and then quickly shower and get ready for my conferences. So I can cut down all the travel times. It can cut down all the other logistics related stuff. And I can be in Hong Kong, Philippines, Singapore, most of the regions in the same day while being physically seated in Singapore. So as we see this new norm is being in effect, the only thing that my security mindset gets intrigued is that the concept of castles and moats approach for security is not going to work anymore, because the data is going to go everywhere now. It was already going everywhere now, but the COVID-related changes that we made really fast-tracked our transformations. So now the data is moving everywhere, so we need to rethink our security approaches, and I guess we'll be having great discussion on that today, John.
Yeah, for sure. And you sound very lucky to me, though, because my travel time I thought I would save it, but instead of which, I'm a bit like Tony. My calendar just fills up instead with virtual meetings instead of my drive time. So I don't find I get any extra sleep at all. But I'm quite envious of you there, Sean. Anyway, look, let's drill into some of the subjects related to the topic today, and I'm going to just start by a sort of fairly gentle introduction to this. So most larger organizations have already embraced the cloud, but many others are still considering whether to make the transition. And I'd like to hear some words of advice from you guys. So Tony, I know you are security architect, etc. in the cloud, security by design. What would your advice be to the folks who may be considering now moving to the cloud? Is this an opportune time? Is this the right time to be doing that?
It's definitely the right time because we all work from home right now during the pandemic. Okay, but I have to tell you some facts. Okay, according to our company's research, the speed of the moving to the cloud is more fast in the Western countries, but it already started the era in the APAC regions. Okay. We are lucky here because we can still sit here to face each other to have a conference. But actually, my colleague, maybe in Philippines, in US, they have worked from home for more than 1 year. Okay, and every company are facing the challenge to open their private data, or what we call a confidential data from which is hosted in their own company, and now they need to connect it with the public cloud so that the people work from home can access to them. Okay, and also this prove that okay it can help the company to increase the productivity. As Paul, you have mentioned your schedule is tightly packed, okay? So for the boss, they think that, oh, my staff's schedule are all packed, so their productivity has increased. So that's why there's also a business, what we call a business value to moving in the cloud. And just take it simple, my suggestion is security by design. When company and organization thinking that or planning that moving your data or technology to the cloud, please consider the security as an important element during the design of the whole infrastructure. This is a simple suggestion for the IT mans.
Well, we'll have to drill on that a little bit because you make it sound simple, but is it really that simple? I'll come back to you a bit later on that. But Alban, I want to just come to you on this because you have a more non-traditional cyber perspective on things, right? So does the cloud environment actually increase the risk, increase the footprint, increase the attack surface, or the vectors for the bad guys?
Oh yeah, in fact, yes, I would argue like that as well. But looking at the topic though, I think how I would argue is that if we're only looking at the new norm, moving to the cloud or not isn't really the key things to consider here. The reason why I'm saying this is because when we're talking about cloud migration, it's really about moving your physical network into the cloud. So you're still thinking about the network security side of things. But the matter of fact is that when you're thinking about people moving away from your network and have to remotely connect into the network, it is more about the connection that matters, and whether there are any other attack vectors that been created because of the increased connectivities and the methodology back into the network. So I think from my perspective, this is probably a more critical point to discuss.
Yeah, no, those are some good points there. And Sean, I'd like to just come to you because are you, I know you have your finger on the pulse when it comes to threat intelligence. Are you seeing that, that there is more opportunity for the attackers, in this, in the more distributed environments that we're working in nowadays?
Yes. So this is a very important thing to note right now, right? As more companies are enabling their systems to be accessed by employees with work from home kind of mechanisms, what we are seeing with respect to just the threat vector is that there's a growing number of VNC scans, SSH scans going on. So what's happening is that the bad guys are typically trying to gain access to the servers that you're trying to expose. So our own honeypot has been hit massively with the VNC scans, so which is telling us what the bad guys are trying to do. And then we'll also see that as more of the systems get exposed online, the efficacy rate of some of the known exploits will go up because there are just new servers, more servers available, for them to try these tricks and capture the systems.
So I often get asked, Sean, is my intelligence feed good enough? Am I really knowing enough about the threats that are out there? Where can I get good threat intelligence?
So I won't be just 2 cents about myself as well, right, or my organization. So we
Well,
work
of course,
with
you
FI Labs.
provide great threat intelligence, yes.
Yes. So we work in a, so FI Labs in itself is a free threat intelligence kind of service where we provide logs, articles, links of what is happening with breaches and stuff. But there is other kind of real threat intelligence which is important, which is more actionable in nature. For example, if a certain kind of a breach-related trend is going on in some other part of the world, it is very effective to believe that these, the bad guys will take this kind of mechanism and switch and bring it to the other regions as well. And that's where a threat intel should be able to preempt, and it should be more collaborative in nature, saying that, okay, I'm seeing something is right now being effective in the American region. I'm sure 4 or 5 days down the line, you will see the same threat vector coming to the Asia region as well. So the threat intelligence needs to be more proactive, more collaborative, where we get a unified view of threats from around the world, and we build a defense accordingly.
Yeah, sometimes that's easier said than done, though, isn't it? Being collaborative comes easily to the bad guys. It doesn't come so easily, unfortunately, to security professionals. And, you know, it's always been historically one of the biggest challenges, I guess. So switching gears slightly, there's a lot of conversation around zero trust, right? And it's pivotal to, you know, to the, you know, the remote working, the cloud environments, etc. Wana, obviously, you're an expert in this area. Can you just give us an explanation of what zero trust actually means to those in the audience who may not be familiar, and why it's so important?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us quite familiar with this term called VPN, right? Virtual Private Network. So basically, it built the secure tunnel from the remote computers to the data hosted in the data center or even in the cloud. So this ZTNA in short is the new evolution of remote access. So essentially it's trust nothing and verify everything. So when this new norm prompt users to access from different devices to those data hosted in the cloud. So you need to ensure that those devices have a proper health integrity, so make sure they are not being exploited prior to connecting to those data. At the same time, how do we secure those data in transit so that no one get intercepted on those confidential informations? So that's essentially the key point of a zero trust network access.
Excellent. So, Ricky, would you like to add to that about zero trust, what it means to you and your clients?
Okay, if talk about the zero trust, I think I will always share to my customer like what we do in the pandemic. Okay, I can give the example. In the security, if in terms of the zero trust, we already said we never trust and already verify. Similar what we do in the pandemic. We may need the mask for protect myself, like the firewall in the network. Okay, at the moment, but the firewall may be not enough to protect the network access. We may need more. So so maybe we need the IPS on top to screen the traffic. Similar what we do in our daily practice in the pandemic, we may need some alcohol for washing the hands. So I will use this tone to talk about the zero trust to customer. This is let them more easy to understand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So look, I've just noticed we've started getting some questions in on the app here. So you see, I'm overloaded with devices here. One with my questions on, and one with the audience questions on. I'd much rather be using the one on the left with the audience questions. So, guys, click on the links, ask questions, take advantage of the, we've got some very strong representation here from some amazing technologies. And it's your opportunity to learn more here rather than relying on my questions. So first question up is, companies are relying on CSPs, but are still worrying about cybersecurity individually. Does that mean respective, I guess, content service providers are not doing their jobs satisfactorily? Who I'm going to pick on here? I think, Tony, you might have some thoughts about this. So individual cybersecurity, should we obviate responsibility for security to the providers, or what is the that's a very common misconception, I think, with the whole cloud in general, isn't it? Should we be just handing over security to somebody else? What's our own responsibility?
Okay, actually, we all the security industry vendors cooperate with the what we call Cloud Security Alliance. Actually, they have set up a framework. Okay, the key frame of the framework is share of responsibility. Okay, of course, CSP vendor, they have the responsibility to provide you a secure and vulnerable environment for you to set up your own applications. Okay, but they don't have the responsibility to take care of the data inside your applications. Okay, that's why companies still need to adopt or customize their security policy when they're putting their data in the cloud. Okay, that's what we call a share of responsibility. In technical term, or more easy ways to term, the CSP provide you a firewall, a tools for you to configure, or an IPS for you to configure. But there are so many settings in the firewall and IPS. The company itself still need to adjust the firewall policy to fit their working environment. Just take an example in the pandemic, because the greater use of the VPN, as Wana mentioned, maybe they have to adjust the policy to tighten the traffic that come from the internet or come from the VPN, so they have to protect the network. But this kind of responsibility belongs to the organization itself, but not for the CSP provider. Right. The CSP provider only provide the tools for you. That's it.
I think that's great advice. Wana, I'd like to also ask you, because obviously you're an offensive security guy, you test security, etc. What's your views on the cloud, the cloud service providers? To what extent should they be responsible for security versus the actual user?
Yeah, some of the good points that Tony mentioned, I'd like to add on top is, in Sophos Lab, one of the so-called the attackers tactics, so they use this so-called supply chain attack. So in cloud infrastructures, there are many vendors involved, and these multiple vendors solution need to stitch together. And oftentimes, the reason why we call supply chain attack is that when one vendor hand over this architecture to the other vendors, there is a massive use of APIs and software developments. And oftentimes, they have like overprivileged accounts, and some of the storage S3 buckets that didn't secure properly. That often lead to compromises. You probably see in the news about like recent outbreak, like Capital One, and then like recent SolarWinds attack. And the bad guy knows that the recent pandemic caused a lot of organizations to scramble into adopting cloud very quickly, and that leaves a lot of traces and undesired vulnerabilities exposed there. So that is something that's important to look at a security perspective in this new norm.
Yeah, not to mention embedding the keys in code and posting it to GitHub, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our favorites. We see a lot of incidents that are spawned by just stupid mistakes of giving away the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. Sean, I just want to touch on the same point with you a little bit as well there, because when we talk about the responsibility of the user, what are your views on their own responsibilities? What should they be doing?
Okay. So for me, cloud security from day one is like a shared security model, as everyone has shared. There is a certain amount of responsibility with the provider. There's a certain amount of responsibility with the actual owner. So depending upon the flavor of cloud that you're choosing, whether you're infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service, your responsibility might vary. Right? In case of software as a service, you are not able to control anything. The only control that you potentially have is the actual data that you're storing in your application. Yeah. So you have to make sure that the data is encrypted and you are the owner of the data. In case anything goes wrong with the cloud services provider, you will still be liable for the loss of data. So similarly, for IaaS or PaaS, you might have to even worry about patching your systems or keeping it up to date. So depending upon the flavor that you choose, make sure that your organization is in line and you're aware of the policies that you need to kick in to prevent your assets on the cloud.
Okay, and leading on from that, because Wana mentioned about third parties risk. Now, how do we properly, this is one of the questions I get asked most, is how do I understand the risks that a third party may pose? How do I assess their own security? You know, what about that? I mean, it's a really difficult issue to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're looking at a big problem over here, right? So let us take a modular look at it. So one thing that we need to understand with respect to third-party risk is, if you're building the software by ourselves or even by our partners, there is going to be a certain amount of code base or libraries that we will actually pull down from the internet, and that will be embedded in your code, because that's how most people work today. Even if I have to build something, potentially when I'm trying to write a code, I will get a segment of it straight out of the web. So when you are embedding libraries of these kinds, ensure that in your SDLC process, there is a way to evaluate this and actually mitigate if there is a bad library that is coming into your system. Or if you are including a library which has not been patched, or it's an older version of the library with known vulnerabilities. That's one aspect of it. Secondly, if you're looking into your partners, there has to be a clear-cut defined process within the partner ecosystem to actually tell them that when you are building something and we are consuming for you, it has to meet a certain quality requirements before we can consume the services. So yes, it's easy to say and easy to do, but the actual process of validating all this complex stuff within your code will take some time, and it will take some amount of maturity in your security process to capture these gaps.
Yeah, you're right. It is easier said than done, isn't it? But you're right. These kind of steps are critical, you know, because we see so many incidents arising from third parties, and you know, it's something that companies have to have better controls on. So the questions are coming in from the audience. Thank you very much. It's great stuff, and I think we got one for you, Alban, which is in your wheelhouse, which says, "Dear experts." That's you. And how to raise the remote users' awareness regarding cybersecurity in this new era. As you say, you're non-traditional cyber. How do you go about, because this is the critical thing, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's the hands on the keyboard, it's the user that's the biggest vulnerability or the biggest risk, right?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, when we talk about internally within the company, the concept of governance is the most important. You have to adapt protocols like DMARC, SPF, these kind of things to control how people are able to pretend to be you. And outside the network, it is more about, you know, you have to extend the concept of security to your customer as well. And that's a critical point that I would point out, because when you think about you know, problems or cybersecurity problem exist in the internet, it's all about fraud. It's all about people pretending to be someone else's identity. That's the, you know, that's the foundation of all the problems on the internet. And in order to counter that, you have to think from this fraud perspective. And you know, there are certainly a lot of challenges. You know, I think one of the questions we discussed is about threat intelligence. You know, one thing that we notice is that when we talk about this kind of threat vector, it's moving as well. So beforehand, you have honeypots to capture emails, you know, and then you scan the emails, and then you know whether there's a phishing attacks. One of the latest research I've come across is that the landscape has been moving away from email into social media. So WhatsApp, you know, if someone distribute a phishing link to a person via WeChat or WhatsApp, it's end-to-end encrypted. How do you actually capture that? Yes. So there's a lot of, you know, the whole thing about intelligence needs to, you know, in some way.
What is the answer to that? Because that's actually a question I get asked a lot. How do you monitor chat versus email? So how do you go about it? You said it's difficult. Is it impossible, or are there solutions?
Not possible to monitor, but there are ways that you can capture the link. Because when someone distribute the link, you won't know. But that link leads to a website that you can scan that website. So if you're able to capture that phishing site via some technical means, then you're able to capture it as quickly as possible. But
so what technical means options might be open to us? Because if they're not on the corporate network, how are you going to be assessing?
I don't want to talk about products, but technically
please.
That's how you can employ some scanning mechanism to actually scan the coding of the HTTP and see if there's a match. You can use text-based textual references or image-based references to see if any website actually make use of that particular company logo. Lastly, you can make use of HTTP referrer. So likely is that the phishing site will will be using some of the properties in the real website. So if you're able to link that together and able to collect all this information, then you have a higher chance to capture that particular phishing site.
Excellent. Okay, thanks.
May I have some supplement
Please
about
do.
the chat scanning? Okay. Because just the question about the mentioned CSP, okay, when we're choosing some video conferencing tools, okay, some trusted partner of the video conferencing tools, such the one we use today, they have some API to open for third-party threat intelligence for scanning the content during the video, during the conversation, okay. You have a Q&A inquiry received from the chat, right? If someone they are using a hacking account to hack in and then sharing some what we call malicious content through the web chat. Okay, this is quite a dangerous vector. Okay, but the trusted service provider, they will open API for third-party threat intelligence to scan. For example, scanning the file sharing, scanning the chat, sharing URL post in the Q&A column to ensure the content here is correct. And then secondly, is about the policy, because in security industry, we said the most difficult part to patch is the human brain, okay? Most of the security incidents starting point is the mixed configurations of the tools, okay? And just like today's meeting, someone will have the invitation link, but forget to setting up the password, okay? And then the link shared to some hacker, and then they hack in and then share some malicious content. That's why other than the chat scanning, we have to ensure to cross-check all the web tools scanning to ensure no more malicious content can be sniffed in the normal chat. This is what the best practice is.
Yeah, luckily we're in the capable hands of the IS Summit organizers who would never allow any malicious intruders into our conversation.
So all the audience should be very free.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I want to add is a very interesting thing, because I always wonder, like in a public chat, like, what if someone, just put a phishing link, that link to a malware site, into a chat and say that, hey, download this particular document, which is the presentation of the speaker. I would say some people would click on it and they will download the malware. So how do you actually prevent that? Is there a methodology to scan everything like that? And that actually brings to one of the points that we always discuss is about zero trust.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting conflict that I see here, because when we talk about network security, cybersecurity, we want to build zero trust. And in the internet, though, internet itself, if you ask the founders of the internet and all that, they will say,
still alive?
Well, they are. One of them is alive. But the thing is, internet is based on trust. Internet is based on trust. Everything works on trust. If you think about the ISP, talking to the ISP, based on trust. The whole BGP protocol, DNS, everything is based on trust. How do you build zero trust on something that rely on trust to work? So that's a thing that's on my mind, and I don't have an answer. I'm just pointing out.
It's a good observation. Thank you for that. So the questions keep coming in, and it's great. So keep them coming in, because it's making my job so much easier. So I'm going to go to Ricky on this one. So A very simple question, really. Any practical tips to secure our cloud data? Anything practical that you could give to the audience on better securing? What basic steps, basic hygiene, perhaps?
I think if for the data protection, the basic step is about talk about the encryption. Okay, means you upload the data or post the data in the cloud environment. You supposedly to encrypt the so that is the basic principle. Yeah.
Okay. Any other sort of tips you think?
Another thing is talk about the new term, the SASE, SASE, because in the market now some of the analysts promote the SASE, which means the cloud platform have the network capability and security capability. So when the user use the shadow IT, for example, like the Google Blocks or Microsoft OneDrive. Okay, when they upload the data to the shared drive, the SASE have the capability to do some sort of the DLP function, which means if some preface data or privacy data upload to the shared drive, the DLP function can send the notification to notify the administrator and the end user they got the violation for the data sharing. Of course, some of the solution have the simple workflow to stop the sharing and revoke the share. That is what I'm suggesting. Besides the encryption, we also can consider to deploy some sort of the DLP for the shadow IT. Yeah.
Okay, so that's SASE, SASE, as you pronounce it. And where can they find? Where can the audience find more information on that? Is that a Gartner?
Gartner is one of the promoters to talk about the SASE. Of course, in the market have any other analysts like Florida and I forgot. Is it the ESS? One of the research company talk about this term.
Okay.
ESS and Forrester Wave, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you also talk about DLP. Now, you raise an interesting one because obviously my background is investigations, right? Dealing with data breaches, investigating incidents. I find time and again that DLP has been circumvented. Why is it we've still not got a perfect... Oh, I can see you nodding there, Wana. You're going to answer this one, aren't you? Why is it DLP has not been perfected? Why is it there's still many loopholes and gaps?
Well, partly because of a lot of company has this thing, privacy concern, and a lot of time the data transit is encrypted, and there's very little detections capability that you can enforce whenever the data left the network or the machine itself. So that's one of the challenge with the DLP, and that's why we can only focus so much on the threat-related data leakage preventions rather than anything that relate to like natural language detections, putting signature on the files. These time of preventions oftentimes circumvented by either adversaries or even the insider threats. So that's one of the reasons that DLP wasn't adopted as we expected many years ago.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, interesting. So another observation rather than a question here, but I'll turn it into a question from one of our smartest lawyers in town, who I know well. Thank you for the observation. Because we were talking earlier about assessing third-party cybersecurity. Well, an observation here is maybe ask them to buy cybersecurity insurance so that the insurer can assess that third party's cybersecurity standard. Do any of you around the panel have any experience of working with insurance providers, and do they really provide a thorough assessment of the security of third parties? Anybody like to pick that one up? Silence among the panel.
Actually, it is a quite new. I think even for insurance industry, this is a quite new business for them. Okay.
Yes.
But to be honest, because here are the ITS talk. Okay. The insurance also use some famous tools or some famous vendors tools for security scanning. Okay. The point is, for a company, we always choose one brand of solution because of the cost, right? Okay, for example, if I got a firewall, I don't need 3 brands of firewall, I only 1 brand of firewall, it's okay. But when I paid for the insurance company, they do equip many different brand of firewall or security equipments there. So because different brand of vendor means they have different kind of intelligence. You know, even for third-party intelligence, different stakeholder will have their own expertise. Okay, then they use different vectors to scan their own my company's own data, so have a cross-check or a double validation of the validity of my data to provide a more secure way to sharing the data within my company. I think this is what they are working about. And it's about OPEX, about the cost. And because I'm paying for OPEX fee to an insurance company, I don't need to pay a CapEx to buy all these equipment in my company. So this is a kind of what we call a value-added security measurement for their own service company.
Yeah. I would guess you guys would all argue that if they use your products and services, they don't need cyber insurance, right?
Yes. Of course.
Okay, Paul, if I may add something, right?
Go ahead.
I had the experience of speaking with one cyber insurer quite some time back. And this is the whole idea is, right, is of the risk transference process, saying that, okay, we know there is risk and we might want to transfer it. So the idea of getting an insurance is that you try to pass the risk to somebody else. In most cases, cyber risk insurance company will have their own boundaries within which they will try to evaluate the third party and evaluate if they are up to the mark or not. And then based upon that, your premiums, etc., may vary, and you will have your T's and C's to actually evaluate what happens when there is an actual breach. Right. So it is one of the way in which you can very well handle your risk. Like, we know we can avoid, we can transfer, or we can mitigate. So this is a risk transfer mechanism. I think it works well.
No, I think you're right. And I think definitely, you know, as part of an adoption of new technologies, you certainly are inheriting risk. And therefore, as you say, risk transfer should be part of the thought process. Do you want to transfer that risk to insurance, etc.? So, okay. So good points. So the questions keep coming in, which is great. And here's a question. Is there a risk that end users will confuse less secure online tools with more secure business tools used to process sensitive company data when working from home? Now, this is an interesting one. So I'm not quite sure what is meant by more secure business tools with less secure online tools. And I'm guessing, you know, personal kind of storage or other sort of less robust online cloud-based tools. So we often find, though, this, you know, and if I can clarify a little bit, we often find that in environments, employees will use a mix of authorized business tools and some other tools which may help their productivity, you know, because they're working remotely, they might find that they need to use these things for convenience. Yeah. How do we adapt to that? I mean, I don't know who wants to pick that up, but you know, perhaps Wana, you know, have you seen that sort of mix of applications in a working environment? Some secure, some not so secure.
Yeah, we do that, and there was even question about like how could we provide like certain level of privacy from those working remotely, right? So they apparently they use their own internet. They are not using company's internet. So we can't put in like next gen firewall to do like web filtering and all that. At the same time, the company data is also residing in its computers where they are not being protected by like infrastructure security. So we do it more proactive, like threat protections, threat hunting. So we have this thing called like EDR. You probably heard of endpoint detection and response. So a team of like managing those remote users, they do like be it a schedule scan or you know, like they look at the baseline. So whenever they use non-corporate apps on their machine, whether these can lead to compromises. We do threat hunting. So these are some of the mitigation that we have in place. I think at least within Sophos, we leverage on those tools. Besides those end user educations, we monitor those devices. If there's any unusual patterns, you know, unusual apps, whether they disable some of the security mechanism there, whether they install any of the unapproved corporate apps. These are some of the mitigation that we can do to the remote users.
Yeah, no, I think you've actually raised a point that I was about to come on to, which is how do you monitor the security of remote workers? And perhaps I could toss it to you, Alban, because you've raised a very good point about the need for endpoint detection and response, EDR type tools, which monitor what's going on the actual endpoint, the device being used by the employee. But also, you know, you've talked about network monitoring. I mean, what is the best approach for remote working? Should it be a combination, or should it be, how really is the most efficient way to sort of monitor and secure a remote workplace?
Well, from my perspective, certainly it would be a hybrid kind of way. But I actually think that, you know, monitoring the endpoint is definitely become a lot more important in the new norm. But also, you know, I actually think that if you're only thinking about the endpoint itself that is authorized to access, it may also not addressing all the issues as well. You know, because when you think about how you know, everyone is connected back to the network through the internet, one of the problem that I mentioned before is this whole thing about fraud. Even if your endpoint is secure, someone may, in the middle, hijack the connection to another endpoint that is insecure as well. So this is the problem about routing everything through the internet. You can't think only about endpoint and monitoring that point. You have to also monitor the transit side as well. You know, whether anyone pretending to be you on the internet, basically.
Okay, good. Ricky, do you have any observations on that? What are your thoughts on network monitoring versus endpoint monitoring, or the best approach?
I think for the monitor the remote user, endpoint and network are also important, but I will put the focus on the identity and access. Yeah, because when the user, no matter how they coming from, they need to have the identity. If I have the proper identity and access control, I can set the tighten policy, say what kind of the policy, what kind of the company resources I allow them to access. So I will put the focus on the how to make the identity and access control more visibility. Say what kind of the device is connected, is that device is the trusted device, okay, where the user coming from. For example, if I know the user is coming from the risky country, like Russia or other risky country, then I can set the tighten policy to control them, asset the corporate resources, or even we can bot it. Yeah, that is my point of view.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask all of you in closing to just leave the audience with perhaps one piece of advice that you think is most important that you would give to a company looking to move into the cloud. And I'll go in reverse order this time. So perhaps Sean, if I could start with you, and what one piece of advice would you give to the audience as a takeaway?
My 30 seconds of fame. So I would just simply say that transition to cloud provides us with the opportunity to elevate our security posture, right? And to really, really ace this, we need to lead it with principles of zero trust and practice least privilege as much as possible.
I love that, the optimism. It's an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So Wana, what are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I will go with the proactiveness, like doing adversary simulations, proactive threat hunting, the the defensive always start with the offensive. So you understand your own weaknesses. So that would be the advice that I like to give when you're adopting cloud or be it remote working.
I love that answer, and I entirely echo that. You know, prepare for the worst, right? You know, make sure you have that readiness plan in place, and you're doing testing of your security, and not leaving it to chance or trust of third parties. So, Ricky, any closing thoughts from you?
I think you talk about the cyber security. We not only talk about the technology control. We also need to consider the awareness because some of the speakers also share the attack is coming from the human error or mistakes. So I think if talk about the cyber security, should be take the mixed approach. Should be include the technical control and the situation awareness. Of of course, if the user can do a more proactive, like awareness training or situation similar, will be good. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent advice indeed. Tony, closing quick thoughts from you?
Okay, just like what I mentioned, security by design, okay? Cloud is the future, cloud is the trend, okay?
Definitely.
Yeah, but before you use that, please consider security as we all have mentioned, all have discussed, ready it before you launching the cloud applications, okay? This is the security by design, okay? Do not try to, I launch the cloud application first and then I take the security measurement as the second step. Do never do that, because you will pay more if you are your organization is being hacked, because now the cyber crime, the speed is so fast. So remember, security by design. Okay?
Agree. Security not as an afterthought. Exactly right. And last but not least, Alban.
Yeah, from my perspective, moving to the cloud is definitely more secure, and it's the only logical way to do it. The advice I would give is that don't think about cloud that will solve all your problems. Because when you think about the whole ecosystem of how connections are done, your end customer, your partners, they are all vulnerabilities in some way as well. So cloud secure yourself. Think about also outside yourself, because this is a lot more complex environment, and you have to think beyond that.
Definitely, yeah. Look at your partners, look at external factors as well. Absolutely. Brilliant advice. Panel, you've been excellent. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and thank you for your expert inputs. At this point, we'll close and hand back to the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all our panelists for your insightful and presentation for us sharing. Thank you.